Hey everybody, and welcome to The Breakthrough Effect. I'm your host, Jared Sebesta. I've had two successful careers. First, I was an award-winning TV meteorologist, and then a financial marketing strategist. I was living the dream, making good money, but inside I was craving for something more, something bigger. So I stopped deferring life and I started creating exactly the life I was searching for. I doubled down on unlearning old mindsets and creating big breakthroughs for me and my family. And now I'm bringing that same transformation to you. Let's understand the rules of this game. Let's get clarity. Let's stop chasing and start becoming. This is the Breakthrough Effect.
Flow is intrinsically motivating, meaning it is really you're doing it because you love it, right? And we actually know that in the moment, if you focus on the outcome, you get further away from peak performance. Because peak performance happens when you're focused on the process, like the small things you need to do instead of the outcome. When we kind of get in our head and we overthink things and we're overanalyzing it, maybe we're being really harsh and critical, you can't get in the flow.
All right, today on The Breakthrough Effect, I'm talking with Dr. Cindra Kamphoff, a woman who transformed from a high school state champion runner obsessed with performance psychology into the mental architect herself behind some of the world's most elite performers, from Minnesota Vikings to Fortune 500 CEOs. As the CEO herself of the Mentally Strong Institute and author of the Amazon bestseller Beyond Grit, Cindra rewires the psychology of success itself. Her high-performance mindset podcast has reached over 2 million downloads across 120 plus countries because she's cracked the code on what separates the world's best from everyone else. Get ready for a breakthrough conversation that will challenge everything you thought you know about mental toughness, high performance, and the hidden psychology patterns that separates champions from everyone else. Please welcome Dr. Cindra Kamphoff. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, that was an awesome introduction. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you today. So appreciate you having me.
I'm excited as well. We've crossed many times on the speaking tour. You and I speak the same language. You're a mindset Jedi, and so I'm really pumped for this. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Jared. I'm excited.
Yeah. So your book is called Beyond Grit. That resonates so deeply with me because my testimony is I was just grit for 40 plus years. And I got to tell you, it works, but it will only get you so far. Where does this mental edge and grit, where do they intersect? Where is like the magic equation, and how do people better use this edge?
All right, great question to get started. So my book is called Beyond Grit for a reason, because it covers 10 practices of high performance. The first one is grit, and then there's other 9 practices that support our grit. And, I use the definition of Angela Duckworth's grit is passion, perseverance toward your very long-term goals. But I think what people get confused around grit is they think it means grind. That it means like you got to just grind. But we know the best athletes in the world maybe have moments where they grind, but they also have to take care of themselves. And if they're not continuing to really develop their passion, their purpose, like those are really energy fueling emotions that aren't connected to grind. So, I think what's important is that to realize grit is not grind, and you have to cultivate that passion and purpose to really stick with things that are hard.
I like that. Let's dissect that a little bit more. There's a difference between grit and grind. Yeah, even in my mind, even as I was doing your intro and asking that question, I tend to put those two in the same category. Why do we get sucked into this grind culture? Is it because of everything that we see? Like the more I'm doing really hard things and beating the crap out of myself, the more successful I am. What's your opinion on that?
Well, my opinion is that's what we see on the outside, is we see people chasing goals, and we, obviously goal setting is really important to our success. We know that people who write down their goals and set their goals are more likely to persist, and obviously that's an important part of grit. I also find, Jared, that a lot of successful people are achievers and high achievers, right? And high achievers tend to overthink. In my audiences, I ask everyone to raise their hand if they're an overthinker. And to be honest, like 90% of people raise their hands. And honestly, I think that 10% of the people who don't raise their hand are just like overthinking if they should raise their hand. Most people are overthinkers, and I think overthinking is one of the barriers to our success and the barriers to high performance and the barriers to authenticity, which is, grit is the first practice in Beyond Grit, but other practices are like owning your purpose and mentally strong thinking and owning who you are and being in the moment and dominating the controllables and living and letting go. And living and letting go is the practice within Beyond Grit that actually most people struggle with. Mm-hmm.
Let's go down that road. When you say that, I think of the word surrender, which is kind of a word that I use a lot of. And to me, I found a lot of success. It's weird because, again, as doers and overthinkers, we think that the more that I do, the more successful I am. And sometimes it's like the opposite is true. The more I let go and create space, quiet space, that actually gets me farther faster. What's been your experience with that?
Well, my experience is that, we make meaning based on the past. And what I mean by that is, we're constantly thinking about what happened to us yesterday or last year to help us make decisions in the moment. And so it's hard to move on. It's hard to let go because that past creates who we are now. I have a tool in Beyond Grit that I call Learn, Burn, Return that I'd love to share with you. And this tool is perfect to help us let go more often and to move on more quickly. How does that sound to you?
I like that. Let's hear it.
Okay. So I got to tell you a story to get started with Learn, Burn, Return. And I live in Minnesota. I worked for the Minnesota Vikings for 4 years as the mental performance coach. And I work with a lot of other football teams, college football teams. And one of the players I've worked with for a really long time is named Adam Thielen, now plays for the Carolina Panthers. But
that's kind of a bummer, but that's another story.
I know, but I did just get a notification this morning that the Vikings are looking at reacquiring him. So let's put our fingers with a cross.
There you go.
That'd be awesome. But in a playoff game against the Saints, when Adam was a wide receiver for the Vikings, he fumbled the ball really early on in the game. And, not a good look for a starting wide receiver. And he heads over to the sidelines and he puts his kind of fist right here and he pushes it down. Well, no one knew exactly what he was doing besides I knew. And next drive, he was right back in that fast. And I'm snapping my fingers in case you can't hear me. And because of this next play mentality, he catches this 43-yard catch over his head, which ultimately helped the Vikings win the playoff game. And so afterwards, this ESPN reporter named Courtney went up to Adam and asked Adam, what did you do to move on so quickly? Yeah, what did you do? Like, what was this action? And I'm a little embarrassed to tell you what he said. Do you want to know?
Yeah.
He said, well, I was pretending to flush a toilet. And so the next day in ESPN, there was this headline, everyone was tagging me on social media and I'm like, what's going on here? And the headline said, mental coach taught Vikings Adam Thielen to flush away his mistakes. And I'm like, come on, that's how I get headlined in ESPN, flushing a toilet?
Your claim to fame.
Yeah, pretty wild. Anyway, so the tool he was using in that playoff game is called Learn, Burn, Return. And basically, it's a trademarked tool in Beyond Grit. You can use it anytime you're overthinking or anytime you are having a hard time letting go of something that's happened or you're ruminating or there's some kind of disappointment that you're kind of replaying in your head. And again, this happens to a lot of overachievers, a lot of high achievers, a lot of people in sales, because they want to be really good at what they do. And so first step is when you make a mistake or you're experiencing a disappointment is to ask yourself, what would I do differently next time? And that's the learn. And the next time is so important, Jared, because you can't do anything about the past. It's done. So it's just like, what's the lesson next time? Next time is so important. And just to remember, you are not the mistake. Mistakes are what we do, never who we are. The second part is to burn, and that means to have the same phrase or action every time to let it go. And we want to choose the same phrase or action because it strengthens a new neural pathway, and we're less likely to be an overthinker. I would call myself a recovering overthinker, because now I use Learn, Burn, Return every day. So, for example, you might want to channel your inner Adam Thielen, right, and flush it. Or I say, how fast, that fast, like that's mine. you know, or if Taylor Swift was here, she would tell us to shake it off, you know, and then the return means that you build yourself back up. And most people learn, they kind of get in that cycle of learning, but they don't burn, they don't let it go intentionally. And then they definitely don't return to, build themselves back up. And this means just telling yourself really powerful things, like this is my passion, my purpose. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be even stronger next time. And most people don't really intentionally build their confidence and talk to themselves really powerfully like that.
I love this because I think it's more than just having a positive mental attitude and positive self-talk. You mentioned it, I'm fascinated by the science and the psychology that when you do this long enough, you're actually creating new neural connections, and you're rewiring your brain. I find that so powerful. I heard something recently that said when it's the hardest is when it means the most. It's easy to listen to this on a podcast and, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. But when you're in that moment,
yes,
whether it's 3:00 in the morning, stressing about your finances and can I make a sale and am I going to be stuck the rest of my life, or, maybe dropping a pass or something like that on an NFL field, this is really important. And so give people like a little bit of a tip. They're in the moment. They just had an opportunity fail, or this reoccurring story is coming up yet again. I'm not good enough and I'll never break through and it will never happen. How do people get in there and really replace that with truth?
Well, I would say first you have to be aware of that thought, and you get to decide if you're going to believe that thought or not. Most of our thoughts are automatic. They're not thoughts that we choose. And I find when something matters to you the most, that's where you can be really harsh and critical of yourself. And there's, really strong research to show the practice of self-compassion, which is this practice of realizing you're not alone and that suffering is part of the human experience, and to take more of a mindful approach and talk to yourself like an inner coach, not your inner critic. It's actually connected to higher performance and more motivation. And so that's why we want to be kinder to ourselves when we feel like we failed or are inadequate, right? To continue to protect our confidence. I have a tool in Beyond Grit for Business that I wrote called the Truth Meter. And Jared, I love tools because I think a tool is the how and the ways to catch yourself so you have a strategy. But the Truth Meter is just a series of 3 quick questions you can ask yourself when you're stuck in that doubt spiral. And the first question is that thought true? Second question is that thought serving you? Is it really helping you? And most thoughts are not true. They're not serving us. And then the third question is, what's a more empowering thought I could choose right now? And that protects your confidence. And, I do a lot of work with different football teams. And I was just speaking to my son's football team, which is a really big deal because, that extra high stakes, because even though it's a high school team, it's my son's team.
Absolutely.
With my, my son's buddies, he was, the workshop went awesome, but I found myself at night kind of overthinking a few things. And I don't even do that with the pro team or a college team, but I do that with my son's team, because it's so important to me. So what you said, it's hard to do it when it means the most to you. I completely agree with that. When the stakes are high and the outcome is really important to you, it's more important, even more important that you're using Learn, Burn, Return or the Truth Meter to get unstuck.
Yeah, and again, I think that's a breakthrough concept that people need to understand. It's in those moments. This is me personally, I've had to reframe it when I'm in that moment of the most self-doubt and the fear, and I want to talk about fear in just a second.
Yeah.
Those are actually the opportunities. You know what I mean? Somebody will give me a call, or people that I'm coaching will text me, I'm having a really rough day, and I'll say, what an opportunity. Now, it's in that moment is when you can create the biggest portals for growth and expansion. So I just challenge our listeners just to piggyback off what Dr. Cindra said, take those opportunities as just that, opportunities. You know what I mean?
Right.
I want to hear your opinion on this. So we talk about fear, you mentioned self-doubt, I don't want to go as far to say these inner demons, but these obstacles, these feelings that just seem to never go away. Do they go away? And would you even go as far to say is that we actually need them and don't want them to fully go away? What's your opinion on that?
Well, fear, it does keep us safe, right? And everyone experiences some type of fear. I love this acronym for fear. I wish I would have wrote it, but I don't. I tried to research who wrote it, and I can't find it. But I love this acronym. Fear is false evidence appearing real. And if you really think about the purpose of fear, and many times it is just false evidence. It's not really the truth. And our brain goes to the worst case scenario, typically when we're thinking about fear instead of really what's actually going to happen or what could be possible. I would say that in sometimes fear is helpful. And what I mean by that is, I fear getting hit by a car. So of course I wouldn't go out on the street and go stand in front of a car, right? And so what's important, however, is that most of what we fear is self-created. It's not really true. And what I find is the thing that I really fear is the thing that I need to move towards. That really helps me live my purpose if I move towards that fear. And so just pay attention to the things that are a little bit scary for you. In 2013, I was at the Boston Marathon bombing. I don't know if you knew that, but I was there.
Yeah, I remember you telling that story from stage one time.
And it completely changed my life. Before 2013, I didn't have a speaking career, didn't have my company, the Mentally Strong Institute. I was a college professor. And it was that event that made me realize I was playing small and made me realize that I had a bigger purpose to share with this world. And my goal when I got back from the marathon was just to do something every day that was just a little bit scary. And I think because that's how you grow into your purpose and ultimately do what you are meant to do. Maybe that scary thing is to raise your hand or to get on a podcast or to go after a big courageous goal or to run a marathon. There could be lots of things that could be scary for you, but I think that's actually how we grow into the person we're meant to become and allows us to live our purpose when we do something every day that's scary.
I love that. We could talk just about that for a few more questions. I do want to flip it around just a little bit, but I just 100% agree with you. For me, my testimony is that I avoided uncertainty. I had enough uncertainty growing up, and so I avoided it like the plague in my adulthood. And I loved how you say too, like it made you realize that you're playing small. That's in my opinion is the opposite of playing small, is that you are intentionally putting yourself in scary situations. I just got to ask you, like, what do you see high performers, again, these high level people that you're working with, what do they fear? Because I think that the average Joe looks at those people and they just don't have the fear. What are they fearing that we can connect with, that, pull back the curtain a little bit?
Oh, that's an awesome question. Every high-level athlete, professional athlete, CEO, leader that I work with actually struggles with the same things you and I do. And you might think that a professional athlete that you might see on TV never struggles with their confidence or never has a setback, but that's not true. What I find, particularly guys who've been in the NFL the longest, that they're able to use this adversity to fuel them. And let's say, for example, they are written about in the Star Tribune, or they're trashed on a social media platform because they had a tough game. The guys that stay in the league the longest have what I call a watch me mentality. So when they face that adversity, they use it as fuel, and they say, well, watch me, And so many times when we're faced with, like, let's say, a tough day or a big client that you just lost, or let's say you really want this new job and you didn't get it, we let that negatively impact our confidence, and we might think to ourselves, well, they're right, I don't deserve that. But I'm going to encourage you instead to say, like, watch me, and to prove to whatever it is or whoever it might be that you have everything that you need inside you. And I think that's what the best of the best do, is they can quickly reframe adversity I love this quote by Byron Katie, and she says, she's an author, and she says, "What if everything happens for you, not to you?" And I think that's what the best of the best do, is they can see that these difficult things, there's a reason for them. And I think, for example, like my experience being at the Boston Marathon bombing, I actually think that happened for me. Like, I think that I was there for a reason to wake me up to my purpose and what I'm really meant to do.
How do people manufacture that experience without having to go through something traumatic or something adverse? Is there like a formula that we can just like snap our fingers to make us like turn the light bulbs on?
Yeah.
What is that? What's that magic pill, so to speak?
Well, I think it's first like awareness of where your thoughts are when you're faced with a tough moment or some type of adversity, right? And we know that, adversity is part of the human experience. We know feeling inadequate is actually part of the human experience. There's nothing wrong with you, which I think is helpful to say, like, how human of you to experience these feelings. I have a strategy in Beyond Grit that I call the 3-OP. And basically it means when you're faced with a difficult moment, you ask yourself, what's the opportunity 3 times? And what I found by doing it 3 times is usually like the third opportunity is the one that you really want to keep reminding yourself of, or the one that you really want to move towards, or the one that if you kept that reframe, right? Change. And what I mean by reframe is you get to change the meaning of anything in your life. You can change the meaning of something going on with you right now that's tough, but also the meaning of something in the past. You get to decide the meaning that you're creating around that. And that's a very empowering way to kind of look at life. I get to decide what this means to me. I get to decide if I'm going to learn, burn, return it, or I get to decide if I'm going to let it, fuel me, or I get to decide if I'm going to let it, tear me down. It's powerful that you do get to decide. But most of it, this is like unconscious. We don't consciously choose. And what I'm encouraging all the listeners to do is like take an event in your life and ask yourself, what's the opportunity? Like, what did you learn from it? And then really using that as fuel.
Beautifully said. I love that. You're speaking my love language, because I'm passionate about this stuff because it's awesome. And it really does fuel expansion and growth. But I've seen these exact principles that you're laying out very eloquently come to life in my own world. A lot of people that I had a big smile on my face for 40 years, and a lot of it there was a lot of like being stuck in the past.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. It's not even about expanding and making more money. It's really about being free. That's really a bigger, deeper conversation, to this, is that when you start to let go and surrender and turn it and burn it and, all the things, it really is a freeing experience. So I love this. You talk about flow. It's like a muscle that strengthens. In the personal development world, they talk about flow. First of all, like what the heck is that? And how can we like get into that to create more high performance and breakthrough?
So flow is actually a term coined by a psychologist named, his last name is Csikszentmihalyi. So he's actually one of the founders of the positive psychology subdiscipline within psychology. And flow is when sometimes people call it like the ultimate peak experience. Sometimes time slows down or it speeds up when we're in the flow. And, flow is intrinsically motivating, meaning it is really you're doing it because you love it. And you can experience flow in lots of different ways. You can experience it, just like on a podcast like this, or making music, or writing a book, or anything that you really love, you can experience flow. On my podcast called The High Performance Mindset, I interviewed this woman named Susan Jackson, who was the first woman to write an article and do a study on flow in sport. So her and I went to the same PhD school together. And she shared with me 3 barriers to flow that I think are awesome and really helpful. One is focusing on the outcome, and I'll explain that. The second one is forcing it. So we can't really force flow. And in fact, when we force it, we get further away from it. And focusing on the outcome basically means we're focused on, like, an athlete might be focused on the sport or like the score, or the outcome of how many yards they're rushing. Or a track and field athlete might be focused on the time they want to run, right? And we actually know that in the moment, if you focus on the outcome, you get further away from peak performance, because peak performance happens when you're focused on the process, like the small things you need to do instead of the outcome. And the third barrier to flow is focusing on yourself. And what this means is when we kind of get in our head and we overthink things and we're overanalyzing it, maybe we're being really harsh and critical, you can't get in the flow, And so I think about when I first started speaking, Jared, I was so like critical of myself. I would notice when I said and and that really didn't allow me to be connected to the audience. And now I realize when I just show up as my authentic self, right, that's how we connect with people. And really quieting that inner critical voice is really important to experiencing flow.
Again, beautifully said. And I think about even my daily practices before I'm a grinder, like I'm a recovering grinder. Like this is like AA. Like my name is Jared and I'm a recovering grinder. So like my tendency
awesome.
when I wake up in the morning, immediately my mind is going to like task. And before I even get out of bed, I can start to feel like the cortisol level starting to crank up, and I'm already kind of getting overwhelmed. I haven't even got out of bed yet, and I have to fight that tendency and create a space of wholeness, because if I'm not tasking from a spot of wholeness and peace, it's out of lack, fear, scarcity, and panic. And I just learned you get farther faster when you don't. And again, you're speaking in terms of flow. You cannot be in flow, but have a posture of lack and fear and panic. They don't coexist. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I think that what you're saying is so important. That inner work is so important to the outer reality, and these two are connected. And I find the way that you explain these things really fascinating. You talk about optimism as well. You look into the future. You see yourself new, your most abundant self, a more optimal, authentic spot. You talk about how there's actually a strategy between like being able to get my mind wrapped around that and believe it, and that helps me overcome obstacles throughout my day. What's your process on that, maybe personally, or what you teach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think optimism is really being able to see the glass half full instead of half empty, right? And we know that people who practice optimism they live longer, and they are a higher performer, that they can look at what's possible right now in the moment. And, our ability to do that is being able to see what's the opportunity right now and be able to see like, all right, and I'm thinking about football right now, because it's football season and I work with a lot of football teams, and their ability to be able to see like what's possible in the moment actually builds momentum. And when someone is just saying on the sidelines going up and down, like, hey, there's a chance, I think of that Dumb and Dumber clip of Jim Carrey's character trying to find the woman, right? And like, you're telling me there's a chance. And I think when we continue to believe that there's a chance, that allows us to be optimistic. And I go back to this confidence research study that we just designed, and we are launching in a couple of weeks, and people can find it right now at confidencestudy.com. But we found, Jared, 1 and 2 Gen Zers. So a Gen Zer is defined as the ages of 18 to 29. So 1 and 2 consistently or frequently feel like they're not enough. And so when we think about, just the strategies, this is so important if you are a Gen Zer to really train your mind every day, like Jared and I are talking about. Like 1 and 2 consistently or frequently feel like they're not enough. Like that just breaks my heart, And I think it's because a Gen Zer is inundated with their phone. They spend 6.5 hours on average on their phone. They grew up with the phone in their pocket and social media, right? So it's so easy to compare someone else's highlight reel to your real life, but it's just a highlight reel, what they post. And so what I think is cool is optimism, confidence are all things that you can grow and develop, and skills that you get to develop. You get to decide if you're going to develop them or not. They're not things we're just born with. And we can make a decision to develop our optimism and our confidence.
Yeah, again, it's so powerful, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we struggle with that. I mean, I say we, like I'm lumping you into my age bracket. Like I think you're probably several years younger than me, but
I don't know, maybe not.
Like isn't it easy? As a high achiever who wants to grow, man. We say the kids really struggle with their self-esteem. Yeah, we do too. You know what I mean? Like something can be really inspiring on Instagram, but it can be really depressing too, because it feeds the beast of lack. I'll just show this to you really, really quick. This is at the top of my journal for this week. You probably can't read that, and you couldn't read it if you were sitting in front of me, because my writing is so bad. But it's kind of like my weekly mantra. I wrote it in my journal as I kind of prepare for the week, and it says, "I have everything. I have everything." So I read that and I think about that. I start my days with that. And again, it's not this I'm good enough, I'm smart enough type of like, woo-woo stuff. It's really trying to create an atmosphere that I truly have everything. I don't lack anything. And when I do that, it puts me in the proper mind space to really create breakthrough and really do big things in life. And that's exactly what I hear you saying. It's fabulous stuff. God darn it, we're out of time here already. One quick question before I let you go. And this is kind of a typical question I ask my guests on this show. But you talked about awareness and not succumbing to the fear and the doubt. Gosh, if you could go into people's brains and like rewire one mental program of belief about themselves, or just replacing some lie, what would you say to people?
The lie I would have people replace is that they are not enough. And that underlines everyone's negativity, is this belief they're not enough. And it doesn't allow us to build confidence and optimism, because we're constantly looking at our flaws and what we're not great at. And so I would encourage everyone this week, when they are noticing that inner voice and that doubt spiral, is just to replace it with like, I am enough just the way I am. And I think if you continually tell yourself that every day, I'm enough just the way I am, that allows you to show up authentically as yourself. And it allows you to also, be your best more often, because you're less harsh and critical of yourself. And our confidence study, we found that one of the top ways to grow your confidence is to let go of judgment and your inner critic. And we found 70% of people struggle with a harsh inner critic and letting go of mistakes. So you're not alone. And one way to, combat that is to remind yourself you are enough just the way you are.
I love it. Well, you are enough, Dr. Cindra. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I was super excited to have this interview. Before I let you go, where can people find more about you, your book, and all the tools and causes that you've got going on?
Absolutely. I'm going to encourage anyone who was moved by today to head over to freementalbreakthroughcall.com, and you can actually get a free mental breakthrough call with myself or one of my team members at the Mentally Strong Institute. So I would love for you just to take advantage of that, and we'll help you apply what we talked about today on the podcast and to use it in your life. And then if you want to learn more about any of my books, you can head over to Dr. Cindra, so DrCindra.com, and that's where you can learn more about my speaking or our coaching and my Beyond Grit books. And I got a new one coming out next September about confidence, so can't wait for that.
Can't encourage people enough to go check out Dr. Cindra. You're a big energy and a small package. How tall are you, by the way?
I'm 1.5 on a good day. And I don't really feel too short until I'm around football players.
Pro athletes.
I'm so damn short.
Thank you for joining me today. Well done.
Thank you. So much fun. I appreciate you.
If this conversation sparked something in you, don't let it fade. Please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. Don't forget to connect with me online as well. Follow me at Jared Sebesta on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, or dive deeper at my website, jaredsebesta.com, where all my free trainings and resources are waiting for you. And remember, stop chasing the life you want and start becoming. This is The Breakthrough Effect. We'll see you next time.